people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. We now have a fight date for former WBO lightweight champion Rhiannon Dixon's next ring appearance. She will be returning to action next month on the 28th against an opponent that has yet to be announced on a Next Gen show. Next Gen, that's a smaller scale.
Smaller than what you're used to from Matchroom.
Next Gen shows are primarily geared towards developing up-and-coming fighters, up-and-coming talent, where Rhiannon Dixon is a former champion, but in some ways, she's an up-and-comer too. Having fought for a title as early as she did was both a gift and a curse, because she was good enough, talented enough to win a belt, but not experienced enough to keep it. And experience is what she needs. In that way, she's practically an up-and-comer.
Sort of.
What you often hear is that after a fighter wins an alphabet title and becomes a world champion, the training wheels have to come off. But for Rhiannon, perhaps they should have stayed on. Sporting a professional record of 10 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 11 professional bouts, we see that with the women, things tend to move a lot faster.
Yeah, they might end up fighting for a title before the guys do, before the guys would.
Rhiannon did, and she ended up losing it in her last fight to the more experienced, the more seasoned Terry Harper. So now Rhiannon is on the bounce. She's going to be facing an opponent that has yet to be announced. The inference you can make is that because she's on the bounce, it's not going to be anybody too difficult or too dangerous, scheduled for 8 2-minute rounds.
Not 10.
My previous video, we read through an article that detailed a potential move down to super featherweight from lightweight, where Rhiannon reigned as WBO champion for a short while. It would appear that she's going to move down to super feather, where Alicia Baumgartner still reigns as that division's undisputed champion. If Rhiannon is going down there, it's not to challenge Alicia for what she's got so much as to get in position to pick up a title should one become vacant, while continuing to amass more professional experience. It being that there doesn't seem to be much to keep Alicia in the super featherweight division. In spite of being undisputed champion there are no big name fights to keep her there, and thus she might move up at a time where Rhiannon is moving down.
Crawford.
Which creates an area of opportunity for Rhiannon Dixon down the line. If she can climb up the ranks and get in position to fight for a title, she might be able to pick one up. She's a good fighter, she just needs more rounds. That's all it boils down to. She just needs more experience, and if she can get it
away from the bright lights on a Next Gen show, as opposed to one of Matchroom's bigger shows, that might be the right idea, the right way to go about things. Look for the ring return of Rhiannon Dixon next month on the 28th against an opponent that is yet to be announced.
Men's super lightweight news. Former champion Regis Prograis is out of his fight with Oscar Duarte next week on the 15th due to a shoulder injury. Ring Magazine broke the news early this morning, with promoters Golden Boy likely looking for a replacement opponent before confirming.
That's a pity.
That's a shame, because I was looking forward to that fight. Regis Prograis being a somewhat capable counter-puncher, very strong one, and Oscar Duarte being a pressure fighter. There was a chance there for Regis Prograis to get back on track against a guy who might be easier to deal with than the last few guys he's been fighting.
Boxers.
Jack Catterall, Devin Haney. Those guys are all boxers.
Movers. Jabbers. Not the kind of guys that give you very many countering opportunities, where Oscar is the opposite. Oscar Duarte is going to try to stand right in front of you and overwhelm you.
Thus, if you're capable, there will be that many more countering opportunities with an Oscar Duarte than a Jack Catterall, than a Devin Haney, than a Danielito Zorrilla.
Stylistically, this was a better fight for Regis, and it's unfortunate that he's suffered this shoulder injury. What was supposed to be a Golden Boy Promotions show marking the end of Regis' Regis' time at Matchroom.
So a Twitter user that goes by the name GFunky asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a job did Eddie Hearn do with Regis Prograis? I recall a lot of people on here saying that was a brilliant move for Regis.
Going to Matchroom was. Going to Matchroom provided Regis with a lot of opportunities, but if Regis as a fighter failed to capitalize on them, that's hardly Matchroom's fault. What do you expect? Eddie to fight the fights for him?
His first fight under the banner, they got him a homecoming fight. They got him a big-name opponent in Devin Haney, a box office opportunity. They got him those opportunities, but it's up to Regis to make the most of them. It's up to the fighter, and so many Americans don't seem to understand that not everybody's going to make it. Not everybody's going to become a big star. Promotion only goes so far, and at some point, ability has to take over.
They act like there's no burden on the fighter to hold up their end of the bargain. Americans do.
It's not all supposed to boil down to promotion, and so often it's the Americans that are fooled by it. The smoke and the mirrors and the production, the bells and whistles.
It's almost like they place more emphasis on that than the fighter's ability to fight.
Matchroom did the best they could with Regis Prograis, but the rest was up to him. And if he didn't capitalize on that, sorry to say, that's more about Regis and less about them. So when I see that he's now pulling out of an Oscar Duarte fight that was going to be promoted by Golden Boy Promotions, it's a missed opportunity.
There was a question as to whether or not Regis Prograis is on the slide, or were his last couple of ring appearances just bad style matchups.
Because a bad style matchup can make you look just as bad as Father Time can if and when he catches up to you. The last 3 guys that Regis Prograis fought were not the kind of guys that give you many countering opportunities because they're moving away from you and staying behind their jab, being responsible. So for a counterpuncher like Regis, that creates a very difficult situation.
At the same time, Regis was getting on in age. He is in his mid-30s.
So was it bad style matchups, or was it just that Father Time is catching up to him and slowing him down? This fight was supposed to provide some answers, but I guess with Regis Prograis suffering an injury, that kind of answers that question. The gradual wear and tear that all boxers experience over time.
Yep.
Repeat injuries and stress fractures.
Signs of decline, that Father Time is starting to catch up. That if you needed any indicator as to whether or not Regis is on the slide, this could be interpreted as one.
Like I said, it's just a pity. It's a pity because I was looking forward to this fight irrespective of who would have won. It made for a good action fight, a good firefight, because Regis, if nothing else, is a hard puncher, and Oscar Duarte is a prolific one, an aggressive one. So it would have been a good watch. It would have been fun.
It's unfortunate, but what are you going to do? The show must go on. And maybe for Oscar Duarte it will, if they can find him a replacement opponent with a little over a week's time to do it.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Ryan Garcia's father has said that Ryan will return to training with Eddie Reynoso for his next fight. It would seem that he's parted ways with Derek James, the fall from grace.
So many star trainers often experience on a long enough timeline that Derek James went from being trainer of the year to having a star pupil beaten half to death by Terrence Crawford.
He used to train one of the Cholo brothers, but neither one of them has seen action in a long while, and their careers jointly have both lost all momentum. He also had Anthony Joshua for 1 or 2 fights, but that relationship ended a while ago, and it would seem that so did this one.
The one with Ryan. Ryan is now leaving him for Eddie Reynoso. In truth, the very best version of Ryan Garcia in terms of nuts and bolts boxing, the ability to box.
From a technical standpoint, the best version of him I ever saw was Eddie Reynoso's Ryan Garcia years ago in the Luke Campbell fight.
Eddie's Ryan seemed a better boxer to me than Derek's Ryan.
Derek's Ryan was doing a lot of weird stuff, turning completely around, giving his opponents his back, some haphazard execution of what's supposed to be a Philly shell, a shoulder roll.
Ryan's time with Derek, he didn't improve. He regressed.
Once trainer of the year, now fading into obscurity as fighters go inactive and fighters leave him. I don't know what becomes of Derek James after this. Ryan going back to Eddie Reynoso heralds an effort to get more serious.
Take things more seriously because he stands to make a lot of money if he does. If he beats Rolly, moves into that Devin Haney rematch.
And I have no stock in what a fighter might say about leaving a trainer on agreeable terms. I don't think that can be interpreted as anything other than a sign of dissatisfaction. You're not going back to Eddie Reynoso because of how satisfied you are with Derek James. Even more perplexing is that it was Derek James in his corner when he scored his big win over Devin, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's the change?
It's because working with Derek ain't the reason that he won that fight. He won that fight because he came in 3 pounds over, didn't kill himself to make the weight, and he was using peds. That's what won him the fight, not working with Derek. But now that he's under the hot lights, he's under scrutiny, and he can't do that.
Oh, now you want to go back to Eddie. Try and improve your boxing, since you won't have the unfair advantages in that fight that you did before.
Very obvious.
He quote-unquote won the fight with Derek in his corner. So why should he swap him out? Why should he go back to Eddie? What's the reasoning?
Working with Derek didn't make him a better fighter. It didn't make him a better boxer. If anything, he regressed.
He's going back to Eddie to try and get better, since you won't have unfair weight advantages to rely on or performance-enhancing drugs.
Get your cycle down right next time.
It's no small thing. Parting ways with Derek James after approximately 1 or 2 years with him, it's no small thing when a fighter swaps out his trainer. If they're doing it for a reason.
I believe that's
He's
his.
trying to tighten up, and I don't think it's because he's about to fight Rolly Romero. It's because he's about to fight Devin if and when he beats Rolly.
There's your answer.
Would seem that the fight will be fought at a full 147 pounds, so you can't play with the weight this time. Golden Boy Promotions is not at the helm of the promotion. It's Turkey, so no hijinks and no funny business.
If they make it there, I have Devin Haney beating Ryan Garcia. If they both make it through their next fights and face each other again, I've got Devin beating Ryan.
So now, Eddie Reynoso has Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez, and Jaime Munguia.
Careful he doesn't spread himself thin trying to help all these fighters.
They all have upcoming fights in the not-so-distant future. Ryan, Teofimo, Canelo, of course, and Jaime, who's on the bounce.
Eddie Reynoso's gonna be busy.
Men's middleweight news, Conor Benn is heading to Spain to get ready for Chris Eubank Jr. Not but a few weeks ago, I didn't think that we would be here now. By all accounts, it looked like both of these men were going to go in separate directions, yet here we are. Boxing is often referred to as the theater of the unexpected.
Crawford.
Conor Benn and Tony Sims are flying to Mallorca, Spain to prepare for this fight on April 26th with Chris Eubank Jr. Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn was finally confirmed for London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium 2.5 years after their first date was cancelled, owing to Conor Benn twice testing positive for the banned substance clomiphene. Sims' gym in Romford, Essex, England, has long been the trainer's most consistent base for fight preparations. But what is certain to prove, one of the biggest fights in Britain this year, and the biggest for both fighters' careers, has meant them choosing to relocate to Mallorca of Spain's Balearic Islands for the warm weather and relative isolation, as well as the easy women.
Yo, slut!
We're going to Mallorca for the whole camp, Sims told Boxing Scene. He's been away a long time for this date and this fight, and now it's actually made. We was only talking yesterday about how excited we are to go into camp and start getting ready for the fight. We've studied Eubank over the years, and it's a monstrous fight. They've booked Tottenham's football ground for the fight. It's a massive occasion, and Conor's really looking forward to the fight as well. He really wants to get in there and show what he's all about as well. Even though he's not been as active as he would have liked, he's kept progressing in the gym. He's non-stop training and always progressing.
There was a recent video upload of Conor Benn getting some rounds in with former welterweight champion Sean Porter, and Sean spoke highly of him and his power. Sean actually said he's got a very strong jab and real strength. For those that haven't seen that video, will that strength carry up to the middleweight division?
Nepotism may have been what spawned this fight, but it's not about their fathers anymore. Between Chris and Conor, it's about them now, and they are owning this rivalry in their own way. The one is left to wonder if Conor Benn has the chops to compete as a middleweight, even if it is against Chris Eubank Jr. All the same, he is a naturally bigger fighter with a lot more experience in that division than young Conroy.
A testament to the vibrant British boxing scene. Consider what both men are walking away from in order to face each other. They're both walking away from alphabet titles. Conor had a shot at Mario Barrios and Chris had a shot against Erislandy Lara. The money they stand to make with each other trumps any of that.
Why should we care?
Because the Americans like to think of themselves as the proverbial center of the boxing sphere, the boxing universe. If that were the case, Conor would be fighting Mario and Chris would be fighting Lara, since the both of them are based out of America. But there's actually an even bigger fight for them, for bigger money, in the UK. A more vibrant and receptive boxing scene for homegrown talent than America is.
It's not saying that Chris Eubank Jr. is a great fighter, for example. He's not.
But he does, in fact, make more money than your average American fighter. He really does, and it's all without an alphabet title. He doesn't really need one to get at a 7-figure purse.
Maybe more than that for this fight. And the same applies to Conor. Conor's making a lot of money without having ever been a world champion, without having ever fought for an alphabet title. What if he wins?
Just saying, America is not the center of the boxing universe. That was the point.
I mean, if Conor loses, I hardly think he's going to stay at middleweight, but what if he wins? What if he beats Chris? Conor's not a big guy, you know. He doesn't have the right physical dimensions to compete as a 160-pound fighter. Even if he goes in there and beats Chris, there's an argument that Chris was never a world-class fighter anyway, and thus beating him doesn't mean you should stay up there.
Chris has never been a bona fide world champion with any of the 4 major sanctioning bodies, and I understand that the sanctioning bodies have their drawbacks, but what does it tell you that he's never held a full version of their titles, that he can't win one from anybody? He never did.
What does that say?
He's not world class.
Here today, he's European level, I would say, in reference to Chris Eubank Jr. He's a European level fighter, but not a world level fighter. So that if Conor goes in there and beats him, while it might be big for his bank account, big for his wallet, in the greater scheme of things, that doesn't mean he should stay at 160.
If Conor beats Chris, if Chris beats Conor, he will have parlayed yet another successful situation that didn't require him to take any risks.
Because he's not taking any. He's fighting a naturally smaller fighter that technically never entered contender status. Chris is naturally bigger and more experienced, especially at this weight, more experienced in the paid ranks than Conor.
He's not risking much by fighting this guy. I would argue that the Lara fight was actually riskier than this one.
So here we are. I saw the proposed undercard for the fight, and I'll be honest, they better not try to bill this as a pay-per-view for us Americans. There's not much there for an American audience. No, this should be a regular fight as part of the regular schedule on DAZN. And let the Brits foot the bill for the pay-per-view, since this means most to them.
It's more for them than it is for us.
We'll see as the way is clear and the path is set for these two boys to collide. Is Chris Eubank Jr. going to be too big, too strong, and too experienced for Conor? Or is time on Conor's side enough?
But Chris has already lost a step. Lost enough that Conor can beat him.
We'll see.